mercy, Aja, Lord Brahma, Isha, Lord Shiva, Sura, the other demigods, headed by King Indra, Chandra, and Varuna, Asura Adayaha, as well as the demons, Tapyante, undergo, Ugram, severe, Tapaha, austerity, Aindriye Driyaha, whose minds are absorbed in thoughts of superior sense gratification, Rite, unless, Bhavat Para Parayanat, one who is wholly and solely engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord's lotus feet. Na, not, mam, me, Vedanti, obtain, aham, I, tvat, in you, Hridayaha, whose hearts, Yataha, therefore, Ajita, O unconquerable one. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. I don't remember if I chanted Om Namo Bhagavate. I'm going to say it now because I don't remember. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. O Supreme Unconquerable Lord, when they become absorbed in thoughts of material enjoyment, Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, as well as other demigods and demons, undergo severe penances and austerities to receive my benedictions. But I do not favor anyone, however great he may be, unless he is always engaged in the service of your lotus feet. Because I always keep you within my heart, I cannot favor anyone but a devotee. Purport. In this verse, the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi Devi, clearly states that she does not bestow her favor on any materialistic person. Although sometimes a materialist becomes very opulent in the eyes of another materialist, such opulence is bestowed upon him by the goddess Durga Devi, a material expansion of the goddess of fortune, not by Lakshmi Devi herself. Those who desire material wealth worship Durga Devi with the following mantra: Dhanam Dehi Rupam Dehi Rupapati Bhajam Dehi. O worshipable Mother Durga Devi, please give me wealth, strength, fame, a good wife, and so on. By pleasing Goddess Durga, one can obtain such benefits. But since they are temporary, they result only in Maya Sukha, illusory happiness. As stated by Prahlad Maharaj, Maya Sukhaya Baram Udvahato Vimudhan. Those who work very hard for material benefits are Vimudhas, foolish rascals, because such happiness will not endure. On the other hand, devotees like Prahlad and Dhruva Maharaj achieve extraordinary material opulences, but such opulences were not Maya Sukha. When a devotee acquires unparalleled opulences, they are the direct gifts of the goddess of fortune, who resides in the heart of Narayan. The material opulences a person obtains by offering prayers to the goddess Durga are temporary. As described in Bhagavad Gita 7:23, Antavat tu palam tesham tadbhavatya alpam medasam. Men of meager intelligence desire temporary happiness. We have actually seen that one of the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wanted to enjoy the property of his spiritual master, and the spiritual master, being merciful towards him, gave him the temporary property, but not the power to preach the cult of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu all over the world. That special mercy of the power, that special mercy of the power to preach is given to a devotee who does not want anything material but his spiritual master. Excuse me. Does not want anything material from his spiritual master, but wants only to serve him. The story of the demon Ravana illustrates this point. Although Ravana tried to abduct the goddess of fortune, Sita Devi, from the custody of Lord Ramachandra, he could not possibly do so. The Sita Devi he forcibly took with him was not the original Sita Devi, but an expansion of Maya, or Durga Devi. As a result, instead of winning the favor of the real goddess of fortune, Ravana and his whole family were vanquished by the power of Durga Devi. Srishti Stiti Pralaya Sadhana Shaktir Eka. Om Ajnana Timidandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurdamanitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaur Bhaktivedanta. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So in this verse today, we're getting special knowledge from Lakshmi Devi herself. In the preceding verses, she is glorifying her Lord Narayan. And she's explaining here that persons in the material world will ask her for benedictions, but whether or not she gives them is a whole other story. And who actually fulfills those benedictions can vary. And she's also showing us that anyone in contact with the material energy has a tendency to exploit others. And I'll mention exploitation a few times. And so just to quickly define it, exploitation, at least one of the definitions, is to utilize the opulence of someone else for our own personal selfish motives, for our own selfish pleasure or gain or something of that nature. And that's what the material world is for, basically. We're in the material creation because we want to enjoy separate from Krishna. We want to enjoy by ourselves, by our own power. And thus we are imprisoned in the material atmosphere, which is nothing more than a very complicated prison system. And so Lakshmi Devi herself is showing that anyone in contact with this material world, including Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, they're tainted by this tendency to exploit. And of course, Brahma and Shiva are on a whole another level, and perhaps when they exploit others, it could be the plan of the Lord to teach us something. It gets a little complicated with personalities of that caliber, but the essence remains the same, that Lakshmi Devi is showing us that if we're here, we have this tendency. And so this tendency to exploit is really the crux. It's really the essence of our imprisonment here. And it gets us into so much trouble. As she says in this verse, O Supreme Unconquerable Lord, when they become absorbed in thoughts of material enjoyment, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, as well as other demigods and demons, undergo severe penances and austerities to receive my benedictions. So she's showing here also that this is Vedic knowledge that is mostly absent in the world today, that the material world is the creation of God, and there's rules and regulations, and it's like it's like a machine that's run, delegated by different personalities, and you can achieve different things. If you want material prosperity, if you want power, if you want this, you want that, it's obtainable by performing austerities, penances, rituals, sacrifices, all these things. They're very real, and the results can and will come. But who they come from, how they come, what you get, it's a little complicated. As she continues to say in the verse, but I do not favor anyone, however great he may be, unless he is always engaged in the service of your lotus feet. Because I always keep you within my heart, I cannot favor anyone but a devotee. So Lakshmi Devi herself is explaining that, yes, these benedictions do come for one who desires them and works for them, but I might not be the one to give it to them. Which seems kind of strange because we may think it's a benediction, like the demons or the demigods, they may think it's a benediction from Lakshmi Devi herself, but really it might be a benediction by one of her delegates, one of her expansion. So in the material prison, we all get what we want and deserve. We all get what we want based on what we deserve. But depending on our desires, we get reciprocation from different persons and different energies. As Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport, that Lakshmi Devi herself is not going to grant material benedictions to a materialist. She'll get one of her expansions, Durga Devi, to do that. And so we may pray, if we have selfish motives to exploit material energy and exploit other jivas or exploit Krishna himself, we'll get different energies, we'll get different persons, namely Durga Devi. And the benedictions that we get are not spiritual, they will be temporary. There will be material benedictions if we even get them at all, and they will be temporary. There will be no eternal benefit from these things. This reminds me of a purport by Srila Prabhupada. I can't remember where the verse is, but in a purport, Prabhupada explains that in Kali Yuga, there are many butcher shops that sell animal meat, and they may have a deity of Durga Devi there, and they'll offer the flesh, they'll offer the meat to Durga Devi and sell it as Durga Prasadam to their customers. But Prabhupada makes a really interesting point that Durga Devi is the wife of Shiva and their Vaishnavas. She doesn't consume meat. She only eats vegetarian dishes. And so they may offer meat to Durga Devi and someone may eat it, but it won't be Durga Devi herself. It'll actually be her followers who are pisachas, witches and ghosts. So these unfortunate sinful living entities are the ones who are actually going to honor that offering and eat it, and those who are taking it are actually getting the prasadam of ghosts and witches and whatnot. So very interesting point that we may desire the benediction of someone and we may actually get a benediction, so to speak, but it may not be what we expect, and it may not be what we think we're getting. So it's quite complicated and confusing. Better to have the association of Vaishnavas who want the highest, who want only pure spiritual energy to be in their lives and to be the only goal of their life. So Lakshmi Devi is saying in this verse that she does she does give benedictions, but it's really only purely spiritual benedictions. And Prabhupada brings up this point with Dhruva Maharaj and Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad was basically given the kingdom of his father, Hiranyakashipu, untold opulence that we can't even conceive of in this age of Kali. Same with Dhruva Maharaj. He was given an entire planet, not any planet either, but the pulsar planet. And these benedictions were not based on a material, well, yeah, they weren't based on a material desire. They were really the benedictions based on spiritual reciprocation, that they desired to serve Krishna in a certain way. And Krishna reciprocates by providing certain things in this material world. So they can be an example for us, so they can spread bhakti actually. And so Lakshmi will give her benediction, but it's purely spiritual. And in order to get the purely spiritual benediction, our desires need to be spiritual. Our desires need to be to serve Krishna, to serve and love Krishna and his parts and parcels. So if we have material desires, then material temporary happiness is what we'll get at best. If we have spiritual desires, those benedictions will come. And so I'll read a little bit from the Brihad Bhagavatamrita and Chaitanya Charitamrita. And this verse today in the Bhagavatam reminds me of a verse or a series of verses in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita that I find very fascinating. That the spiritual energy is quite variegated, and there's many personalities. And so I will speak about Radha because I'm trying to be a Gaudiya Vaishnava, and I'm assuming that most persons in this call are also worshippers of Radha Krishna. But Radha and Krishna actually have many expansions. They have Sita Ram, Lakshmi Narayan, and then in the material world, their further material expansion is Durga and Shiva. And if we have this exploitative desire in our heart, which got us here, and if we don't work on that, which in my opinion comes mostly from mercy, if we don't desire for that to leave, then we may never leave the material world. And if we have that exploitative nature, what we get is Maya. We actually get the shadow of Radharani. So I'll read a couple of verses from the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. This is the second volume, chapter 4. I might read a couple verses, but it starts around 170. I did not keep my page marker on the right page, so please bear with me for a second. Okay, so in this chapter, Narada Muni is glorifying Narayan, and then he takes a sidebar to glorify Lakshmi Devi. And there's a very interesting verse that I'll end with that explains the shadow of Lakshmi Devi is Maya. So this starts on text 172. Similar to the original Lakshmi, you should understand. Similar to the original Lakshmi, you should understand are the goddess of the earth and the other consorts of the Lord, for the Lord's creative energies are all of one category. Lakshmi is sometimes called by such various terms as Mahavibhuti, Yoga, and Yoga Maya. She personifies the glorious celebration of existence, knowledge, and bliss. She is eternal, absolutely real, and without beginning or end. The essence of her identity is beyond describing. She is the mother who gives birth to the varieties of ecstasy that appear during the worship of the Lord. Through her, the Supreme Lord displays his different features. Thus, the distinct variety of the Lord's devotees, of his devotional service, of his world, and of his activities constantly arise from Lakshmi. The pure servants of the Lord understand her and her activities, but persons whose minds are confused by dry knowledge derived from bad logic cannot figure out what she is. Of the two divisions of the Lord's energy, the superior and the inferior, she is known as superior energy. She acts on her own and is also called Prakriti. She has many expansions who are named in terms of the various manifestations they produce. Maya, who comprises the material modes, appears as her shadow. So this is a lot of really nice information about Lakshmi Devi and her expansions. And this last point really stands out to me, that Maya, the personification of falsity and ignorance that we talk about so much in Krishna consciousness, is the shadow of Lakshmi, or you could say the shadow of Radharani, because we are devotees of Radha Krishna. We can say that Maya is the shadow of Radharani. I'll read one or two more verses. This Maya is the generator of the false material creation. She embodies falsity and ignorance, and therefore she cannot be described. Non-eternal yet primordial, she creates for the jivas the cycle of material life. Appearing in person, she presides over the eighth covering of the universe. Because the transformations of material creation do not affect her, she is called Prakriti. Only by transcending her does one obtain liberation and devotional service. She has produced the material universe, a creation no more real than a magician's trick. So we can see that the entire material imprisonment that we're within is within the shadow of Radharani, and it really has to do a lot with what's in our heart, that we get stuck here, and it really has to do with our heart, how we can get out of this mess. She actually presides over the eighth covering, the outermost covering of the material universe. She's there personified, and in the Brihad Bhagavatam, when Gopakumar is traveling outside of the material universe, he comes in contact with her. And so I was thinking about, this is something that I thought about a couple months ago, that's very important to me and dear to me, that I was trying to think about what are the prerequisites for having the favor of Radharani, to have her service. And I thought of two things, one of which should be obvious to all of us, which is the desire to serve Krishna, the desire to have a loving relationship with Krishna through devotional service, because love is dynamic and love is active. So, of course, there is service involved to Krishna. That's the number one prerequisite to have her mercy, because her whole existence revolves around Krishna. And so why would she be anywhere where Krishna is not involved, right? Our desire to serve Krishna is there, and therefore she has interest, because that's her whole existence, is to serve Krishna with love. Another prerequisite that I thought about is that Radharani is a lady. She's female energy. She's the consort of Krishna. And she's chaste. She's the most chaste, specifically to Krishna. And so a chaste lady would never willingly and wittingly put herself in any type of situation where she may be exploited. That goes against the principles of chastity. And so this is a concept that I don't hear talked about very often, that I thought was very important, at least for me, is this tendency to exploit others, other jivas, even of ourselves, Krishna's energy, this tendency to utilize something that doesn't belong to us for our own selfish benefit. This keeps us, in my opinion, from Radharani, because this tendency for exploitation is not an environment for which a chaste lady will willingly present herself. She will avoid a heart that is contaminated with such a tendency to exploit. And Prabhupada in the purport today references Sita Devi, the very wonderful example of the pastime of Sita Ram, where Ravana kidnaps Mother Sita. And there's a really nice pastime in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that illustrates, or specifically Mahaprabhu illustrates, that if we have this mentality, this desire to exploit, we'll get Maya, we'll get the shadow of Ranarati, or the shadow of Mother Sita. We won't get the real Sita, or the real Radha. So this is in the pastime where Lord Chaitanya comes in contact with the Brahmana who's very upset that Ravana touched and kidnapped Mother Sita, and Lord Chaitanya pacifies him, and then he finds some Shastra in the Kurma Purana that the fact is that Ravana never actually touched Sita. What he got was the shadow Sita, the Maya Sita. And so this is in Madhya Lila, chapter 9. I'll start with verse 184, I guess. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very satisfied to hear about the Brahmana's method of worship. Finally, the Brahmana hastily made arrangements for cooking. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took his lunch at about 3 o'clock, but the Brahmana, being very sorrowful, fasted. While the Brahmana was fasting, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked him, "Why are you fasting? Why are you so unhappy? Why are you so worried?" The Brahmana replied, "I have no reason to live. I shall give up my life by entering either fire or water." My dear sir, Mother Sita is the mother of the universe and the supreme goddess of fortune. She has been touched by the demon Ravana, and I am troubled upon hearing this news. Sir, due to my unhappiness, I cannot continue living. Although my body is burning, my life is not leaving. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, please do not think this way any longer. You are a learned Pandit. Why don't you consider the case? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, Sita Devi, the dearmost wife of the Supreme Lord Ramachandra, certainly has a spiritual form full of bliss. No one can see her with material eyes, for no materialist has such power. To say nothing of touching Mother Sita, a person with material senses cannot even see her. When Ravana kidnapped her, he kidnapped only her material, illusory form. As soon as Ravana arrived before Sita, she disappeared. Then, just to cheat Ravana, she sent an illusory material form. Spiritual substance is never within the jurisdiction of the material conception. This is always the verdict of the Vedas and the Puranas. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then assured the Brahmana, have faith in my words and do not burden your mind any longer with this misconception. Although the Brahmana was fasting, he had faith in the words of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and accepted food. In this way, his life was saved. After thus assuring the Brahmana, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu proceeded further into southern India and finally arrived at Durvasan, where he bathed in the river Kritamala. So Mahaprabhu explains to the Brahmana that the real Sita was never actually kidnapped. Ravana came close to Mother Sita with the intentions of exploiting her opulence. He wanted to exploit her for his own personal selfish desires. And because of that, as soon as he came near her, Mother Sita vanished and replaced her actual form with the Maya form, the shadow of herself. And so, in one sense, you could say Ravana interacted with Mother Sita and did kidnap her, but it was only her shadow form. The shadow form is real, but it also has no substance. So that's what we get here in the material world. And Mahaprabhu convinced the Brahmana that this was true. Mahaprabhu said, just have faith in my words, which is interesting. Apparently the Brahmana took his word for it and accepted food. And in this way, he was pacified. But then I'll skip a couple of verses because Lord Chaitanya actually found Shastric evidence for this and later brought it back to the Brahmana. So it's just a couple of verses ahead. So Mahaprabhu goes to a temple and he finds Shastra there corroborating his point to the Brahmana. This is text 200. There, among the Brahmanas, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu listened to the Kurma Purana, wherein it is mentioned the chaste woman's narration. Srimati Sita Devi is the mother of the three worlds and the wife of Lord Ramachandra. Among chaste women, she is supreme, and she is the daughter of King Janaka. When Ravana came to kidnap Mother Sita, and she saw him, she took shelter of the fire god Agni. The fire god covered the body of Mother Sita. Then in this way, she was protected from the hands of Ravana. Upon hearing from the Kurma Purana how Ravana had kidnapped a false form of Mother Sita, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became very satisfied. The fire god Agni took away the real Sita and brought her to the place of Parvati, goddess Durga. An illusory form of Mother Sita was then delivered to Ravana, and in this way, Ravana was cheated. After Ravana was killed by Lord Ramachandra, Sita Devi was brought before the fire and tested. When the illusory Sita was brought before the fire by Lord Ramachandra, the fire god made the illusory form disappear and delivered the real Sita to Lord Ramachandra. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard this story, he was very pleased, and he remembered the words of Ramadas Vipra. Indeed, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard these conclusive statements from the Kurma Purana, he felt great happiness. After asking the Brahmana's permission, he took possession of the manuscript leaves of the Kurma Purana. Since the Kurma Purana was very old, the manuscript was also very old. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took possession of the original leaves in order to have direct evidence. The text was copied onto new leaves in order that the Purana be replaced. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then returned to southern Mathura and delivered the original manuscript of the Kurma Purana to Ramadas Vipra. So Mahaprabhu finds this evidence of the illusory form of Sita being kidnapped by Ravana, and he brings it to the Brahmana was already pacified by Mahaprabhu's words, but then he brought the Shastric evidence to him as well. And so we can see that this Maya that we are so familiar with is really just the shadow form of Radharani, and a lot of it has to do with our tendency for exploitation. So that's mostly what I had to share. I do want to comment about one or two sentences in the purport. I figured they are quite important that Prabhupada mentions this, and I just want to honor its importance. In the second paragraph of the purport today, Prabhupada says, we have actually seen that one of the disciples of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur wanted to enjoy the property of his spiritual master, and the spiritual master, being merciful toward him, gave him the temporary property, but not the power to preach the cult of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu all over the world. That special mercy of the power to preach is given to a devotee who does not want anything material from his spiritual master, but only wants to serve him. This is a really powerful personal example that Prabhupada's giving, that he's presenting this very humbly, that one of his godbrothers had the desire to exploit the material opulence of his spiritual master. And I've heard, I have no frame of reference and I have no context for this, but I've heard and I can understand that the Gaudiya Math was very, very opulent. They had a lot of opulence, and they were very powerful in India at this time. And so Prabhupada's godbrother wanted this for himself, I guess. And the spiritual master, being merciful, gave it to him, but it was only a temporary Maya Sukha. It was the desire to exploit was there, and so benediction was given, but it wasn't the real benediction. It wasn't the truly spiritual benediction, which is the power to spread the Sankirtan movement, which was actually given to Srila Prabhupada, as is evident in all of his books and all of the temples and all of the ISKCON devotees all over the world. And so I just want to end on that note. If anybody has questions, comments, corrections, please share.
Hare Krishna, Nagaraj Nitai Prabhu.
Very well, Taraka Prabhu.
Yeah, thank you for a nice class. I like this angle of examining our condition as being one of exploitation. Within the scope of material nature, in a materially conditioned state, everyone is trying to exploit the material nature in all of its permutations, manifestations. Um, so we're exploiting uh, Krishna's energy, Krishna's resources, and even our own bodies, our own bodily energies and resources in all different kinds of ways, engage in exploitation. The opposite of exploitation, of course, is the devotion. And the challenge, of course, is uh, to transform our consciousness from one of exploitation to one of devotion. It's helpful just to understand this essential truth about our predicament, that we have these two options. It boils down to uh, a very simple binary choice. There's exploitation or devotion. Our activities can be dedicated to the service of Guru and Krishna, or they can be directed towards our own gratification in some way or other. So simple, simple understanding, but it's helpful uh, to see things in that way. I find at least that it's a helpful understanding. It makes um, what is sometimes a little complicated to wrap your head around. It becomes a simpler problem when you reduce it to those simple terms. Um, so exploitation or devotion. And so the practice of devotion, practicing devotion, and is part of the means by which we rectify our consciousness and um, transform it from one of consciousness of exploitation to one of devotion. Um, so spiritual master engages us in all kinds of activities of devotion, and those activities themselves are purifying. They revive our original consciousness of devotion. Loving devotion is reawakened by engaging in acts of devotion. So, and of course, there's countless ways in which we can do that, and but chief amongst them, of course, is hearing and chanting the Lord's holy names, which is incredibly simple, not at all difficult. Anyone could do that, but such a powerful process, and um, everything springs from that one simple activity. So I I just marvel at the fact that a complex predicament can be reduced to these very simple terms.
mm,
And I like to reduce things to simple terms because I am a bear of little brain, and
mm.
I uh, I like to have things reduced to simple terms. Anyway, that's some of my thoughts. Thank you for for the reminder and for presenting some of the various angles and understandings of this. Your various references. I appreciate the reading. And it's 8 o'clock. Thanks again, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Well, thank you very much for your comments. Yeah, your point about devotion is wonderful. You added the point that I was missing in my presentation, so I sincerely thank you for helping me. Yeah, it really comes down to exploitation or devotion, one or the other. I focused on the exploitation aspect in this class, and the solution is devotion. We increase devotion. We center our consciousness and our existence around devotion increasingly. By doing so, naturally the exploitation will diminish until it's nil. So thank you very much, Prabhu, for sharing that. Is there anyone else that has anything? I got a message. You're welcome, Yasudev. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Jamba. Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, we shall end on time. Thank you, everyone who attended. I sincerely appreciate your association. I hope my presentation today was helpful for you. If I was at all helpful in your devotion, then my life is a success. So thank you for attending. Hare Krishna. I hope you all have a nice day full of miracles. Haribol.